Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast. Join Stewart Heath for down-to-earth conversations with top professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders who have a story to tell. Let's get rolling.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stewart Heath, your host of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity Podcast and the founder and CEO of Harvard Grace Capital. Thank you for joining us for another episode of our podcast. And we are very grateful to have Mr. Randy Sadler to be our guest today. And can't wait to get into his story. Just perusing his LinkedIn profile is pretty interesting. So, Randy, thank you so much for being here.
Well, Stewart, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be with you.
Great. He hails from East Tennessee, so he's an hour ahead of the rest of us. And so let's get into this. Randy, if you've looked at any of the episodes that we've posted so far, people might notice that I tend to interview people of a certain age, our age, and that's because we like to get real stories of people who've, nothing wrong with instant success or quick success, but that's not really applicable to most of us.
Right. Yeah.
We have challenges and hurdles and bumps in the road, and those are the stories that we really want to get to. So, my first question is always, can you share a moment in your history that was sort of a game changer? Maybe it puts you on the path to where you are now versus what you're doing, what you thought you would be doing. Perhaps you thought you were going to be an Indy 500 driver, and now you're a principal in an insurance services business. So tell us about one or two game-changing moments.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I think probably one of the, early in my career, and I was grew up in East Tennessee, and then went to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. So I was a tank commander for quite a few years. That was quite an experience getting started. But coming out of the military, I had looked at talking to corporate recruiters, et cetera, and ended up in corporate roles. So I worked at Procter & Gamble and Pfizer, and what I found typically was I was jumping every so many years, and this is the first role that I've landed in where I've been here 12, almost 13 years, right? So most of my roles were, 2-4 years stints. And I think that's kind of unfortunate because, our ancestors, if you will, many of them worked 30, 40 years for the same company. So the world changed quite a bit, right? Well, I was working for a company here in Knoxville called Jewelry Television. I was the head of marketing. And I really enjoyed the role and was doing quite well. And then during the 2008 downturn, the company struggled, and no doubt, because if you're selling something like jewelry during a recession, right, people are switching away to staples, if you will. And so after 5 years there, I was let go. So that is probably one of the most shaping events, I think, in anyone's life, but it certainly was a large shaping event in mine. And I think in many ways it was extremely liberating, right, because I had really kind of bought into more of a corporate role, working in roles where you've definitely got a 9-to-5 schedule. You're definitely coming to the office. You're definitely running a team, et cetera, right? And there's a lot of expectations. And there's also, large corporation, probably a lot of politics, right? And so a good friend of mine, Sean King, who's an attorney CPA, we were workout buddies, knew each other really since middle school, interestingly, asked me to come work with him here at CIC Services. And I really look back and just really see God's hand in that because it's been a tremendous blessing. And so really transitioned away from corporate tracks into much more of an entrepreneurial space. Within a short amount of time, was able to buy into the company. And what we do is help small, mid-sized businesses own their own insurance company. And so I would not have made that transition on my own. And I really look back and I can honestly say I feel like God got me fired, and it was great. So,
that is such a common entrepreneurial story.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I got fired. I'm sure it's quite painful and
At the
stressful
time, right?
at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the time, I had a few sleepless nights and spent a lot of time reading. I read the Psalms a lot when I'm scared, right?
Yeah.
And because
Right.
if you read the psalmist, he went through some really dark times and had people trying to kill him. So I always remind myself it's not that bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. King David was scared a
Yeah.
lot, and yeah,
Yes. Yes.
he's one of my favorites. I think it was 3 times he had the opportunity to kill King Saul and didn't do it
Didn't do it. Yeah.
because Saul was God's anointed. You know,
Exactly.
and
Yes.
just wow. But Saul's trying to kill you. And anyway,
Yep.
lesser man would have solved that problem a different way. But
Exactly. Well, and that's another. There's a lot of lessons to be learned in the Psalms, which
oh yeah,
the psalmist always does the right thing, even when the chips are down. And King David not killing Saul when he had the chance, and many times choosing the path of righteousness. So,
yes,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah. We don't take God's prerogatives into our hands. So, how did your experience in the Army help you in your entrepreneurial journey, or
Yeah,
was it
it does a
opposed?
lot. Yeah, so I was a tank commander, and so that is quite an adventure in itself. And the first thing that I would say, being in the Army, did was get the bug out. So, uh,
Yeah,
a lot of young men, feel a need to do something, valiant or to conquer something or do something, very aggressive, if you will. And so I really enjoyed being in a tank unit. So I was a tank platoon leader and executive officer and ended up being maintenance officer as well. But really working around track vehicles, running over lots of stuff, blowing stuff
breaking
up.
things. Yeah,
Yeah, firing a 120 millimeter cannon. I really got a lot out of my system, which was
yeah.
I think that really made it possible in a lot of ways to step into the business world, and I don't know, just become a person that's bearable to be with, right? So,
Yeah,
you
yeah, my experience, I never served in the armed forces. My experience in working with those that have is they tend to be a lot more patient.
I think that's true. Yeah,
And maybe it's because, like you said, you got all that other boyhood aggression out of the way, and you've just learned to work with people in large organizations, and a lot of entrepreneurs are, you know, most of us have a bit of mental illness, and we're not very patient, about things, and we're consummate multitaskers. A multitasker as a child has ADD, but when you're grown up, suddenly it's a great thing. So,
that's right. That's right.
so
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that would, after other than getting the bug out, I would also mention I really do think the Army teaches a lot of leadership, and this is it's very interesting, different. It's a different style of leadership than you may learn in a corporate setting, right? So when you are when you're an officer and you have soldiers in your care, right? You know that if you ever get deployed to a combat zone, all those soldiers are going to have live bullets in their guns, right? So how you lead them is extremely important. And certainly when I was going through school, we learned about, lieutenants in Vietnam they used to call it being fragged or really
Right.
killed by your own men from behind. So
Yeah.
really had to develop a leadership style where the soldiers in my care knew that I cared about them, loved them, put them first. We had to achieve the mission, but at the same time, they had to know that I had their interest at heart more than my own. And so I think the military has a very positive experience. The Army and being tank commander had a very positive impact on me from just a leadership standpoint and leading people, but also just working with people, right? And seeing them that way. So that was a very big positive too.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you gain their respect and lead them so that they don't kill you? And
Exactly. If they had the chance, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
they had
that's right.
the opportunity and the
That's
ability.
right.
So,
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And I did not deploy to war, so I do thank God for that as well. But nevertheless, for 5 years we were ready to go. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right. Similar question, but it's sort of a different side of the same coin, perhaps. I like to ask entrepreneurial folks about bumps in the road.
Yep.
We all face challenges. Sometimes a bump could be a game-changing moment. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just a bump. So I'd like to hear about some of the challenges you have faced, either in the Army or in your business journey, and how you were able to deal with them and how you got through them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think bumps in the road is very often necessity is the mother of invention, right? So in the space that I work in captive insurance, very often we have to pivot based on how the economy is functioning, right? So what we do is help businesses set up and own their own insurance company, and so that offers several key benefits. I mean, the first benefit is very often insurance costs too much, and it's very taxing, right? And so, if we simply sold on that benefit, then when the insurance costs are down and people really aren't troubled by the cost of their insurance, then our business would be down too, right? So that bump in the road really caused us to look at the business in a multifaceted way, right? So we can't just have tunnel vision. And by the role that I'm in now is the head of sales, right? So that puts a heavy weight on me to make sure that we are selling new products. So that requires innovation, right? So in addition to insurance savings, what other benefits might somebody enjoy owning their own insurance company? A business owner, of course. There's tax benefits as well. So if you own an insurance company, you can elect to be taxed as an insurance company, which is normally a deferral. If you look at large insurance companies, they receive money in, defer it based on future losses, and then they're able to and then be taxed at a lower rate in the future, right? So there's times when that is more beneficial to a client than the insurance savings, right? So it's one of the bumps in the road is realizing what we're doing is not working. We've got to pivot, and so what we've done is really, and some of this is just taking advantage of opportunities that fall in your lap. But what we've done is pivot to other benefits, like I'll give you an example. Construction clients may feel like their insurance coverage is pretty good. They don't feel like they're paying too much. But then we've been able to come to them and say, how do you do a lot of subcontract work? You sub out a lot of work. Well, sure we do. We sub out lots of work. Well, what if we helped you form your own insurance company and your subs are probably buying bonds, right? Sub bonds from another insurance carrier, like say Zurich. What if you sold it to them out of your insurance company and then you keep all that profit? So, pivoting to creating a new profit center using an insurance company for a business overcomes sort of that bump in the road of my product isn't really solving a need for them. So how do we give them a new solution using the same product, right? And so that's been a huge win for us, I think, doing that. So that's one that definitely comes to mind is continually pivoting the product you have to meet new markets or create newfound opportunities. Yeah.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I like that. Turning the bump in the road into an opportunity, actually.
Being forced to pivot or being forced to look for new ways to maximize your market, right? I think that's very important. The second probably bump in the road, probably worth sharing, is and again turn something into an opportunity, right? So, and this is not in the insurance space, but I think as an entrepreneur, I really got started in the rental house market, right? So. I found rental property to be a great way to build some wealth and learn business very fast, which you do, right? And there's certainly
Yeah.
bumps in the road, tenants that don't pay, et cetera, right? So I owned 10 rental homes, and then my wife was looking for new houses to buy, and she found another entrepreneur who was trying to sell his units, and ended up talking to him. And he said, "Why don't we?" He was tired of managing them, and I was young at the time and had the energy to manage, right? So he said, "Hey, why don't we partner, and you manage them and start taking ownership, and I'll just let you do that." That worked out really well, right? Well, when we had the 2008 downturn, and I don't know if you remember 2008, but it was terrifying.
Yeah. I had hair at the beginning
Yeah,
of '08, so
yeah, it was it was terrifying. Well, we owned at the time, between the two of us, we owned 12 condos in a new association that had built for college students, right? And this thing was supposed to print money, right? We've got college condos, it's got the swimming pool, it's got the basketball court, sand volleyball, little gym, and these kids are going to pay. Well, guess what? A lot of them didn't. So when 2008 hit, a lot of them were living with mom and dad going to college, or they were moving into much lower cost apartments. So the occupancy rate in the whole complex went from about 100% to about 75. And that's a big bump in the road, right?
yeah.
Well, interestingly, the complex had a unit manager that ran the complex, and she had set up a business. Well, she wanted out, so this bump in the road created an opportunity. She wanted to sell her management company, and my partner and I bought it. And since we now control the management company with the leasing, it put us in a position to at least make sure our units were full, but also to do our best to fill everybody else's units, right? And interestingly, really create a profit center that was making money when all of our rental properties were barely hanging on for dear life, but now we had a business that made money. And what you realize when we had the management company is everybody really needed us because
Yeah.
we had the marketing power of a management company. And so the owners didn't need us that much when times were good and students would look at all the ads, right? But then now they needed us. So I think there's definitely some value in when you hit a bump, pivoting to where you're more needed. And that's, sometimes those are going to fall in your lap. Sometimes you got to look for them.
I like that. Well, you survived 2008 a lot better than I did. So, but I
Well,
remember it well. I remember it well. Good for you. You're an executive with this company. You're entrepreneurial. I think hands down, most entrepreneurs are lifelong learners.
yeah, very
Um,
important. Hmm.
what do you do to stay current? And feel free to, tell us that it's this podcast, it's such and such podcast, or it's this magazine or journal that you read, or are you a book guy? How do you stay current and on top of your game?
Question. So I think you're right, Stuart. You got to be a lifelong learner, and you've always got to. I mean, the first thing that I would say, honestly, is I'm always been a little paranoid about everything. So, and
That's part of being an entrepreneur. So
paranoia causes you to wonder what's coming, right? What technology is going to come that's going to disrupt us, what competitor is going to come that's going to disrupt us. What's the government going to do that's going to disrupt our business, and so constantly thinking about those things and staying a step ahead is important. So I do a lot of reading on industry publications, typically when in the businesses that I'm working in. That's probably step one. And so for us, Captive Review is a Captive Insurance and Captive Insurance Times, Captive International. Those are the big three, and I read those articles pretty regularly and get a sense on any trends, anything we're missing, any ideas we can rip off and reapply. Those are always very, very good. And I've got a good friend that says, if you steal something once, it's plagiarism. If you steal it three times, it's research, right? So it's pretty clever. So we
right,
we don't want to plagiarize, but we definitely when you see a good idea, don't be proud, copy it. And so we try
right.
to do that.
Imitation is the greatest form of flattery.
Yeah, it really is. Now, I do also, I've read quite a few business books. The one that I just finished I was encouraged by a friend to read it, called Broken Money. It's all about really fiat currency, and how over time people's savings is inflated away, their hard work's inflated away, and really it's actually the way that our current monetary system works is really downright immoral. I mean, it's stealing people's labor and then giving it, essentially enriching the friends of politicians is largely what's happening. And hopefully that'll change. Hopefully that'll change. But knowing that really helps think about investment strategies. This book in particular advocates cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, which is if it does in fact keep advancing the way it is, there's a reasonable chance it'll become the world's reserve currency. But if you don't know anything about Bitcoin, there's only could be 21 million Bitcoin the way that it's set up, and so in a way it's like gold, right? There's a finite amount. You can't print more, and so it will actually be a store of value for people's work, the way that money used to be. Like when you worked and got a gold coin, that had a store of value in it, right? And now when you work, you better spend it or invest it in something that'll beat the market, right? It beat inflation, and that's harder to do these days. So, yeah. Reading is always important. I wish I read books more, but I do read quite a bit. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good segue. You've already swerved
Yeah.
into my next question a little bit. And without values, dollar amounts, account numbers, or anything like, I love to ask our entrepreneur guests, what do you do with your investable cash?
Yeah.
Great many entrepreneurs say, well, I always apply it back into the business. You've already talked about a real estate portfolio. What asset classes do you like in a specific stock? Maybe if you're a stock and bond guy, tell us what you do with your investable cash.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would say I'm about a fourth, a fourth, a fourth, a fourth. Maybe not quite a fourth of each, but 1/4 is my own businesses that I own. So I'm part owner, and I work with partners. So I don't actually own any businesses outright. So my dad and I own rental houses together, which has been great bonding for us. And and gives you a nice tax deduction on why you're meeting for breakfast, right? So anyway,
Right.
so my real estate has been, businesses have been one. So my dad and I are partners. I mentioned the property management company that manages college condos. And then obviously here at CSE Services, I'm a part owner in the firm. And so, and there's probably more sweat equity there than actual dollars going in, if you will. But that largely, if I look at the value of those businesses and my share in those businesses, it's about a quarter of the wealth God's given me to date, to steward. The other quarter, I would say, is stocks and bonds, but that's largely in retirement accounts where I'm getting a tax benefit. I do believe that American corporations over time usually win. So I think that's a good starting point. You know what I mean? Like there's going to be some losers, and if you speculate and chase the .com bubble or even potentially the AI bubble, there's going to be winners and losers, and you might pick right, you might pick wrong. But largely, American companies led by American people will succeed over time. So I've got about a quarter in the stock market, a quarter in real estate, and so I own investment properties. I own a home, of course, and even now, my dad lives in a house that I own. So and there's other good reasons for that, by the way, because that gets it out of probate, right? So we don't have to fool with it. Yeah. Yep. So that's smart. And then the other quarter actually is cryptocurrency. And so a good friend of mine, Sean King, who actually brought me on board here at CSE Services, he's a visionary. He really is. He's like always a step ahead. So he came out of we both went to high school together, middle school together. He went on to be an attorney and a CPA, and he got into retirement plans really before they were cool, and then everybody got in, and then he got into captive insurance, which is what our business does, before it was cool, and then he got into cryptocurrency before it was cool. So I'm waiting to see what's next on the agenda for him to declare cool. But just I learned a lot from him, and fortunately was able to get into cryptocurrency earlier than a lot have done so. But I still believe that there's a lot of room if you understand cryptocurrency. It really creates decentralized ledgers, for lack of a better term, allows a lot of frictionless trade, and many, we rely on centralized institutions like banks, title companies, etc. And I don't know that they'll completely go away, but their role will diminish as people find ways to trade with cryptocurrency, and inevitably government will find a way to tax it, right?
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
and if they don't find an easy way to tax it, they're just going to tax your property more. So don't, it'll happen. But I do think that it's a really wise area to look at and research and then invest in. Yeah.
Uh, I have studied a lot on blockchain, and I think that's going to impact all sectors of the world, even and in my close to my heart is private securities, private real estate things, and being able to make it possible to trade those things safely and securely, and
Yeah.
and, and ultimately create a market for it. But yeah, there's unlimited uses for blockchain. I don't understand currencies, the cryptocurrencies. You know, it's only worth what somebody else will pay for it, just like any other asset.
Yeah.
But smarter people than I, you're probably among those. You know, and look, Donald Trump's even proposing to have
Yeah.
having a crypto reserve as part of the United States assets. Like the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, and he's a real
Yeah.
estate guy, so maybe I need to learn a little bit more. I've never
Yeah.
dabbled in it, wouldn't know how to do it, and don't understand it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what helped me a lot was really stepping back and thinking about currency through the ages, right? So if you went back in time, you know, people would gather seashells, and they needed to be a full shell, not broken. They would spend hours polishing them, and they would put them on belts and necklaces, and then they would trade those things for leather or skins or weapons or whatever, food, and because there was a limited supply store, there was a store of value in those. People recognized them and trusted them, right? Now, eventually, when you could make stuff easily with industrial methods, then those lost their value, right? But even in something like World War II, one of the most common currencies was cigarettes, and so soldiers, those were like money. And even today in Africa, one of the more common currencies in large parts of Africa is cell phone minutes. They have use and value, but it's something that can be easily traded, and it's decentralized. And so I think if you start thinking about what currency really is something that a group recognizes and is willing to value and use that as a way to trade, right? And some of the key cryptocurrencies have hit a point where they really have what's called network effect, and there's a lot of people that have them and use them, and so undoing them will be difficult. And so you ought to bet a little bit on it. So yeah,
yeah, well, maybe I'll pay attention when I can put it in my Apple Wallet. So,
there you go. Yeah.
all right, final question here. Uh, Randy, if you were mentoring someone or somebody just really wanted to follow in your footsteps, what one piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I may give you an answer you expect or don't expect. I mean, the first thing that I would say is, commit your life to following Christ. I think that without a doubt, I'm convinced 100% through life experience, research, trying to prove the gospel wrong, etc. 100% convinced that we're all made in the image of God, put on this planet for a purpose, and that finding that purpose in the Lord Jesus Christ is paramount, and so that is provided for me a tremendous anchor, tremendous purpose, a compass on how to act morally, a compass on how to treat people, a compass on how to conduct business with the most integrity I know how to do. So I think I would start there, honestly. Now, that's not to say that there aren't many wonderful, wonderful business people that aren't Christians, and so going beyond that, I think the thing that I've seen over time is that the and I tell my sons this all the time, and they're doing it, is show up every day. And when I look across the years in my career at people that have advanced and people that stalled or business, and I think about my competitors that we take business from. It's just because they don't show up. It's rarely because they're not intelligent. It's rarely because they're not nice people. It's because at some point in time they quit coming. I don't know if they hit depression or if they have a health crisis and no one's there to help them or step in. But show up every day. Show up every day, and that is a huge key. Over time, anybody will be more successful than not doing that.
When I was a young man and maybe 2 years out of college, there was a fairly popular business book. It was short, like
Yep.
the 1 Minute Manager, that used to be very popular, but it was short, and it was simply called Showing Up for Work.
Showing up, yeah.
I can't remember who wrote it, but it was basically that, it's, if you don't show up, you know what's going to happen. But when you do show up, things can happen.
Right.
You might accidentally learn something and become good at it. And so you got to be present, is the way another former boss of mine used to just be present and participate. So
Right.
that's good advice.
Yep. Keep showing up, because then doors open, things fall in your lap, opportunities present themselves.
Because
Yep.
you're in the right place at the right
Yep.
time.
Just consistently doing the right thing. Yeah, absolutely.
And on your first point, yeah, you're absolutely right. Nothing more important than a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah. Amen.
Okay, Randy, if anybody who's watching this episode would want to reach out and start a conversation with you, how would you like for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is really by email. I check it all the time. So Randy, RANDY at CIC Services LLC.com. So RANDY at CIC SERVICES LLC.com. Yeah, that's the best way to reach me. Or if
We'll
you
make
want,
sure
you
that
can.
link. Yeah, we'll make sure that link, as well as a link to your
Yeah,
LinkedIn profile, is in the show notes. Make it easy for people to click on that.
that'd be great.
And once again, thank you so much for being here and sharing of your time. I love your stories and your wisdom. Appreciate you sharing.
Well, thank you, Stuart. It's an honor to be on with you. And if you're ever over in Knoxville, look me up. Let's have lunch.
I will definitely reach out to you.
Great.
Hold on just another second. And to our audience, thanks for watching this episode of the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. And be sure to look out for our next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Growth, Grace, and Prosperity podcast. If you'd like to be a guest, visit growthgraceprosperity.com/guest. We'd love to hear your story.